ब्रह्मा च लोकाधिपति सहमपति कतंजलि अंधिवरं अयाचत संतीर्थ सत्ता अपरजख जातिका देशे तु धम्मं अनुकंपिमं भजं।
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Well, I've noticed in the discussions, the questions and answer sessions, that many of the things that people are asking about are to do with our, not so much with meditation technique, but to do with our life in the world of work and family and activity and communication and so on. And this is naturally an area of primary concern, major concern for people, that the skills that we learn during a time like this, a situation of, say, maximum support, where you have a lot of like-minded people gathered together. We have a routine of keeping silence and formal meditation through the day. So it's a sort of maximally supportive conditions for formal Dhamma practice. But the value of these skills or qualities that we might develop during such a time as this, the value is in a way most fully exhibited in the life outside the retreat, the formal retreat period, in how we relate to the other people that we share the road with, the people that we work with, the people in our families, the people in society, how we live in the ordinary, everyday rough and tumble of our worldly lives. So I thought I would speak a little bit about that this evening, and to share a few reflections on that aspect of the practice. One of the things that makes a retreat environment very fertile like this is how we use the precepts as a foundation for our way of relating with each other. We take on the precepts of say non-violence and respect for each other's property, for restraint in terms of sexual activity, and the precept about not lying is cranked up to noble silence. So hopefully you're managing to sustain that to the degree possible, and refraining from drugs and alcohol in terms of the 5 precepts. So this set of principles, in the way that if we take these seriously, then during the course of a retreat, that provides a foundation of say, peacefulness, not just between ourselves and others, but also within ourselves. So that if we want to have a supportive and fertile environment to live in and to practice with, then the precepts are always something that we can take with us. Obviously, in the workplace or in the family, not everybody around you has taken the precepts. They're not living by such a rigorous standard. But it's principally the effect that the precepts have upon our own minds. As I was saying a day or two ago, how when we had a retreat at Chithurst Monastery many, many years ago, and Ajahn Amaro was reflecting, none of you have killed anybody this week. That's great. How marvelous. You don't have to have the horrible memory of having killed anyone, or even killed an ant or a mosquito. How marvelous. What a wonderful thing. None of you have stolen anything. You don't have to worry about being caught by the police or anyone getting angry with you for having taken their property, because none of you have stolen anything. Hooray, marvelous, well done, well done. So this is not a small thing. In the wider world, as Buddhist meditation spreads, mindfulness is very popular nowadays, and it's evolved into mindfulness combined with compassion. So compassion is now seen as an important feature of this sort of secularized mindfulness. And my suspicion is that the precepts will be the next big discovery. I think it's called. I'm not entirely joking. I've talked with a few people about this, like John Kabat-Zinn, and I said, I think this is going to be the new big thing is behavior therapy. That if you don't do things that are regrettable, you don't have to regret them. Wow. If you don't lie to people, you don't have to worry that your lie is going to be found out. And how much that reduces your levels of anxiety. If you don't steal things, or you don't defraud the government with your taxes, you don't have to worry that they're going to find out, because you've got nothing to hide. It's a very simple approach towards self-respect and ease. So I'm not sure how long it will take them to discover this, but I suspect along the way people will realize, you can be restrained and careful in your behavior without it being a kind of moral diktat, sort of imposition on your freedom. So in terms of sustaining a healthy and helpful environment for Dhamma practice outside of a retreat situation, I heartily recommend living by the 5 precepts, taking that standard quite seriously, and seeing the effects of that. How that, just as in a retreat environment like this, it provides a basis for peace of mind. It's exactly the same in the world outside of the retreat. I won't call it the real world, because I tend to think that what we discover in a retreat environment or inside a monastery is more close to the real world than the other world, the world of appearances. But I feel that even though we might relate, and maybe it's very different in India, but certainly in the West, people tend to relate to the precepts as a set of restrictions. Don't do this, don't do that, no, 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 no. And it's read as some sort of imposition upon your natural freedom. And when Ajahn Chah first came to the West, people remarked that it's strange, Lumpur, you're talking about wisdom, you're talking about meditation. In Thailand, you're always talking about the sila, about the precepts, but you don't seem to be talking about that here. He said, well, you can tell that people don't like the subject. So what they're interested in, all the questions, is about wisdom, about enlightenment, about liberation, about developing states of samadhi and jhana and such like. But they'll discover that if they want to develop those qualities of concentration and wisdom, that if they don't pay attention to their sila, then it's going to make things much more difficult for them. He said it's like a boxer. You go into the ring and you have a fight and you get smashed up in the fight, and then the fight's over and you barely recovered from your wounds from one fight, and then you go back in and get beaten up again. So this is what people seem to be doing. They go in for a retreat and they kind of say work with their minds and develop all these good qualities. Then they go back out into the world, equals sort of going into the ring, and they get beaten up by unskillful behavior, and they have all these kind of injuries and the damage done, and then they go back into the retreat to recover from that again. So sooner or later they realize that it's easier just not to get beaten up. Don't climb into the ring, and then you don't have injuries to recover from. So Ajahn Chah was very good at helping people to learn their own lessons rather than sort of wagging the finger and saying, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. But he was reading the group very, very skillfully. So even though there is that public perception of precepts as somehow not allowing us our natural freedom. I feel it's in a way it's a misreading of the nature of the precepts. And in one particular discourse, the Buddha speaks of the 5 precepts not just as the Sikkhapada, the kind of rules that people are encouraged to follow, but he also calls them the 5 Mahadana, or the 5 great gifts. And so he speaks about them as gifts. And he says, if you say take the precept against killing, then you are granting immeasurable freedom from distress, freedom from fear, freedom from anxiety for innumerable beings. If you've taken the precept not to kill anything, other beings don't have to be afraid when you're around. They know that you're safe to be near. If you've taken the precept not to steal, then people don't have to be worried when you come to visit their homes. You don't have to kind of put all the valuables away and lock the precious things up, because they know you're trustworthy. Or in the workplace, the people know, oh, this person can be trusted. So that you're granting freedom from fear, freedom from anxiety, freedom from distress for those beings. And then he says, but also in turn, you grant freedom, immeasurable freedom from distress, freedom from fear, freedom from anxiety for yourself. That if you are, say, refraining from harming other creatures, or killing creatures, or you're stealing things, or engaging in sexual misconduct, you're refraining from lying and intoxicants, then what you're doing is that you're not creating the causes for those acts, those states within yourself, so that if you refrain from stealing, then when you meet another person, you don't just see someone who you might possibly steal from. You see more than that. You see the whole being. You are able to appreciate the whole picture. If you are given to violence, if you are always fighting with people, or you're killing things, then what you do is you create the seeds of violence within yourself. So you're afraid that others are going to attack you, or you're afraid for your own life. If you refrain from engaging in violence, you don't put those messages out. You don't encourage that in others. You're not planting the seeds for that. So when the Buddha said you grant immeasurable freedom from fear, freedom from distress, freedom from anxiety for yourself, there's this kind of principle that he's talking about. And when speaking in this way, you might think, well, I'm not sure about that, or I haven't seen that for myself, but I would encourage a sense of, well, is that true? Does it work that way? Yeah, is that the case, or is it not? What's been my own experience? They have an old saying, which is, I'm not sure if you have the similar saying in India, but in the West there's a saying, when a pickpocket meets a saint, all they see are pockets. Yeah. So it's that kind of principle that is being talked about here. So that what we are doing with the precepts and living by the 5 precepts, it's not just a matter of obeying the rules, but rather what is being done is that you're drawing upon that quality of virtue, what is called the gunadhamma, that virtuous quality of your own heart. So it's really that in your heart which loves the good, that which rejoices in goodness, rejoices in harmlessness, in kindness and respect for other beings. So that the actual wording of the precepts, I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of another being or taking what is not given, and so on. That's the external aspect of the precepts. But that's just a way of spelling out, those qualities of the heart. So they by adopting the behavior, you make it easier to access that quality of your own heart, that in you which is incapable of violence, that in you which is honest, that in you which is can't take advantage of another person or can't deceive another person in terms of your sexual behaviors or your relationships and so forth. So that by adopting the behavior in a way, it opens up the door to your own pure heart, and that's is really what I would say is the purpose of the precepts. It's not, say, just controlling behavior, but rather it's helping us to draw upon a more profound and skillful or more wholesome dimension of our own being. And that's the principle, say, that the Buddha established the 8 precepts on as well. There's another sutta called the Uposatha Sutta, where it talks about the Buddha's reflections, where he established the 8 precepts, which I'm kind of guessing most of you are familiar with as well. So in the 8 precepts, they have, some of them are the same as the 5 precepts. So the first one is to refrain from killing, the second one to refrain from stealing. The third one is changed from refraining from sexual misconduct to complete celibacy, brahmacharya. And then the fourth and the fifth, refraining from lying and intoxicants, is the same. Then the 6th precept is to refrain from eating outside of the morning time, just eating in one part of the day, from dawn to midday. And then the 7th precept is refraining from entertainment, beautification, adornment, so listening to music, wearing makeup, jewelry, going to movies, sports games and such like. That is a not seeking entertainment, distraction, decoration. And then the 8th precept is say, refraining from using a particularly luxurious or super comfortable sleeping place. So when the Buddha was formulating the 8 precepts, it came from his own reflections. And the description he gives in this sutta is, he's thinking about what would be a good training, a good, say, form for the lay community to practice in if they come to the monastery on the holy days, on the full moon, the new moon, the 2 half moons, on the lunar weeks. That other spiritual groups have different ways of different practices, different pujas, different spiritual trainings that they use on these holy days, on the moon days. So I think, what would be a good form? What would be a helpful practice for the lay community on these holy days, these Uposatha days, the moon days? And so then he starts off with thinking about the behavior of the enlightened beings. So he says, all their life, for an arahant, from the time of their enlightenment till the passing away, then they never deliberately take the life of another living being. Wouldn't it be a good thing for the lay community to adopt that behavior? Then they will be living as the arahants do, and that will be for their long-lasting welfare and happiness. So it starts off, okay, if you were totally enlightened, you couldn't take the life of another creature. Your hand cannot move to take the life of another being. And so that it's adopting the behavior, it helps you to open that door to that quality of your own heart. And then similarly, all their lives, an arahant, from the time of enlightenment, an arahant never takes what is not given. So wouldn't it be good for the lay community one day a week on these moon days to adopt that conduct? And in that way, they will be living as the arahants do, and that will be for their long-lasting welfare and happiness. So similarly with celibacy, the brahmacharya, from the time of enlightenment to the passing away, an enlightened one never engages in any kind of sexual activity. Wouldn't it be good for the lay community to one day a week to adopt this behavior, and they will be living as the arahants do, and so forth? So it's taking the natural disposition of the enlightened mind that is celibate, that has few needs, that is non-violent, that is honest, doesn't need intoxicants, is not interested in distraction, doesn't need to be sleeping all the time, only kind of needs to relate to food as a way to fuel the body. So it's taking the natural disposition of the arahant and saying, okay, so if a layperson adopts this behavior, then they will be living as the arahants do, and then they will see for themselves, what the effects of being harmless, being celibate, just relating to food to nourish the body rather than just to be snacking on and entertaining yourself with through the day. And then the results of living in that way display themselves, that they speak for themselves, and we can see the effects, the results of that. So I'm not suggesting everybody lives by the 8 precepts, but certainly by the 5 precepts is a very skillful way of say, creating a foundation for peacefulness and a foundation for well-being and contentment. When we have the ceremony for people determining the 5 precepts, there's a little verse that is recited at the end, and it goes, these are the 5 precepts. Precepts are the source, the basis of happiness, sukati. Precepts are the source of true wealth, bhoga sampada, which doesn't mean you'll win the lottery or become a billionaire, but it means you'll be content. The bhoga sampada, it sounds like you mean you get a lot of money, but it really means that there's that the quality of contentment. You've got everything you need. You've got as much as you need. You're not in a state of greed for more. And sila is a base for peace, for nibbute, for peacefulness. Therefore, let the sila be purified. So that's in terms of carrying on the depth or strength of practice outside of a retreat environment. This is what I like to call the portable retreat. You can take it with you. And even though the people around you are not being so quiet or contained or kind or thoughtful, what happens is that if we are honest and kind and thoughtful, then that does have an effect on the people around us. If we notice that there's, generally speaking, a very positive effect that happens if we are someone who's trustworthy, someone who's kind, someone who's honest, someone who is thoughtful and respectful in the way they relate to others. That you tend to communicate that and have something of an effect, a positive effect on other people. If you carry it around like a kind of weapon, like, I'm keeping the precepts, and so this is giving you a good example. So you should straighten yourself out like me. If that, then you're using the precepts as a kind of a weapon, and that's not what it's meant for. A kind of club to beat people over the head with, to try and force them to behave like you, but rather it's a natural effect. If you're honest, then people will like to be around you. If they know that you're non-violent, you're not trying to get something from them, you're not trying to deceive them in any way, then people are comfortable around you. You draw good people to you. So another of the aspects of carrying on the retreat environment and to sort of sustain this, as was mentioned once or twice already over this time, is that sapurisa sangseva, drawing close to good people. So one of the effects of a retreat is being around good people. The people that we hang out with, they have an effect on us. So sometimes we can't choose, aseva nacha balanang. Sometimes we can choose who we spend time with. Sometimes we can't choose so much. But to the degree that we can, then to draw close to like-minded people who are kind and honest, people who are unselfish, people who are wanting to spend their time practicing meditation, who are not just seeking distraction and worldly goals or seeking entertainment. So the effect of our spiritual friends, in my own experience, is very, very profound, and that this is not something to be glossed over. So that the degree, I know Delhi is a very big, very, very big city, and many of you also don't even come from Delhi, you come from other parts of India. But nowadays, one of the advantages of information technology is that you can have a meditation group on 3 different continents quite easily. You can connect with friends, and you can be, drawing close to people, even though geographically you might be far apart. I do know when I lived in the States, there was some regular meditation groups. You'd have one person in North Carolina, one person in Wisconsin, a couple of people in Portland, Oregon, somebody up in Seattle, and 3 people in Berkeley, and somebody down in Stanford. And they're all kind of sitting together. even though physically they're all in different places, but they would have a sort of log-on time, and they would they have a sort of group Skype call with nobody speaking. They'll be sitting together, but that's a sitting group, but they are literally all spread all over the USA, and so that I feel that these ways that people can share their interests, to connect with each other, your friends, to be talking about what's been useful to you, different talks you've listened to, or joining together to have Dhamma conversation face to face. Literally being in the same room is the best. But probably some of you think, well, we're way out here in Dwarka. I mean, I'm down in the south of Delhi. This is kind of 100 miles away from. I can't go all the way over there. So that I understand that sometimes those distances can be very challenging. But the degree that you can physically come together and spend time with each other, that's worth making the effort and time for. If you can't physically get together, at least connecting through the phone or through a Skype call or FaceTime or any of the multiplying ways that people can communicate, so that these kind of channels of connection, they can be incredibly wasteful and stupid and make life more difficult for people, but they also can be means of valuable communication and providing this quality of mutual support. I was saying to the group that was gathered at the Deer Park Institute last week in Beer, how I recognized for myself that if I tried to develop meditation or commit myself to Buddhist practice and I hadn't had the spiritual support of other people in the monastery, I wouldn't have had any hope at all of sticking with this. I'm far too distractible and interested in too many things, and too kind of easily affected by the people around me. And so I am not ashamed to say, I wouldn't have had a prayer without all of the people who I've lived with and shared time with in the monastery, my fellow monastics, also the lay people who are committed, dedicated practitioners, that I have a huge debt, quality of gratitude for those kalyanamita, those spiritual friends. And that the benefit that I've had from being around like-minded people is incalculable, absolutely incalculable. And so I greatly appreciate that and have seen for myself what a big difference that makes. And in the style of Ajahn Chah's teaching, the way he set up his monasteries, they're quite different from many other forest meditation monasteries in Thailand, in that a lot of the forest monastery style is no group meditation, no morning and evening pujas, just go to your kuti, go to your hut, meditate by yourself, sit, walk, sit, walk, sit, walk. And you'd meet once a day for the alms round in the morning and the communal meal, and after that you'd just be expected to be by yourself to practice alone. But Ajahn Chah's style incorporates a lot more group meditation, group chanting, working together, functioning as a living human community. And it's interesting when he was criticized by other forest ajahns, that, don't go to Wat Pah Pong, you have to work all the time and you have to meditate with everybody else, you can't, your time by yourself in your kuti is a lot less than a real forest monastery like us. And so he was sometimes criticized, and also the kind of pujas we would do house blessings or do funerals or baby blessings, which many other forest monasteries would not do. They would leave those ceremonies to the village monasteries to take care of. But Ajahn Chah saw that for himself, when he talked about it, he'd say, I realized I could be very successful in my practice by myself, living under my glot, under my mosquito net, out in the forest or up in a kuti by myself. And if I didn't have anybody else to live with, I could just go on the alms round and do sitting and walking meditation. I could have a grand old time. My mind would be very focused, very clear, have a lot of wisdom, a lot of insight. Great. When it was difficult was when I had to go and live in a monastery and had to live with these idiots, and these kind of monks who are kind of incompetent and stupid and lazy and argumentative. And he said, when I lived with other monks and novices, then I would get very kind of restless, and angry, and irritated, and I would always feel I was better than them. I could sit longer, I could give better Dhamma talks, I could chant better than them, I was more knowledgeable about the teachings. And so I would find myself criticizing and complaining. But then I realized that if all I did was just run away to hide in the forest and live by myself, I was never going to really learn any useful lessons. The very fact that I would get frustrated and irritated and complaining is telling me there's more work to be done. So he said, when I made myself go and live in a monastery and spend time with other monks and novices, and then I realized that was where I learned the important lessons. If I was just off by myself, I was evading, sort of bypassing a lot of defilements that were there and needed to be attended to, but they were not getting addressed. They were allowed to run freely because they weren't being challenged. So then, because he developed so much wisdom through that kind of friction, that friction and difficulty of living with others and seeing that it's tough work, but the results are very, very beneficial, that became a whole style for him. That became like the defining style for how he established Wat Pah Pong and then the branches that came up after that. So that's very much the theme of the way that we operate. Rather than trying to find peace through kaya viveka, and just sort of physical seclusion all the time, that you're also, along with a degree of physical seclusion in individual practice, then you have the finding peace through the citta viveka, the internal seclusion, the kind of the inner detachment or disentanglement that you can develop being close to people and working with people, but learning how not to get identified and attached to your feelings of like and dislike, gaining and losing, comfort and discomfort, and so forth. You're learning by being with others to meet the defilements, difficulties, attachments that are there, and learning to transcend those through meeting them. When Ajahn Amaro went back to Thailand after establishing Chithurst Monastery, Citta Viveka, in 1981, he went back for a visit to Thailand. So Citta Viveka had been open for a couple of years by then, June of 79. They have their 40th anniversary in next month. So Chithurst had been open for a couple of years, and he went back to visit Thailand in 1981. And so Ajahn Chah asked him, "So, Amaro, how's it going? I was there when you moved into that new place at Chithurst, and how's it all taking shape?" And so he said, "Oh, it's amazing. I've never been with such a inspiring, committed group of monks, and the nuns. They work hard to really get along with each other, and they're very committed and dedicated. And it's the most kind of wonderful group of monks and nuns I've ever lived with. It's quite marvelous, fantastic." So Luang Por Chah was completely unimpressed and said something like, "You won't develop any wisdom living with that lot." So it's completely harmony and happiness. Amaro, come on, get a grip. He didn't promise to send any particularly difficult people on purpose, but they have a way of showing up on their own. And sure enough, a few difficult characters did, and other difficulties appeared. So rather than avoiding friction and difficulty, you recognize that that's the very means whereby the edge of your wisdom blade is sharpened. But you have to get the angle right, and the pressure. You have to get that right. But if you do, then that edge is enabled to be kept very, very keen. So I feel it's the choices that we that we can make in order to be with like-minded people, good-hearted people, to develop those kalyana mita. That's very important, and I strongly encourage that. It's very lovely now. You've got this center, Dhammaram, here in Delhi, that this has hatched since the last time I was here. So sadhu, sadhu, sadhu to all of those who've been working extremely hard to make it all happen, and to providing this beautiful environment. So you've got a place now where you can gather, and that those kind of spiritual friendships can be nurtured and can form. But it's really that sense of common aspiration, common commitment, common effort, that where we help each other along. There's really no substitute for that. There's another interesting teaching when the Buddha is speaking about the origins or what feeds ignorance, feeds avijja. We often think of ignorance as being the sort of the cause, the seed whereby suffering arises. We look at the teachings on dependent origination, and there it is, avijja, right? There it is, right at the beginning. Avijja paccaya sankhara, sankhara paccaya vijnana. That's the kind of the origin or the source of all the trouble. But avijja also has its source, its origin. And there's one particular, it's in the Book of the Tens, in the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses, Book of the Tens, Sutta number 61. And the Buddha says, it kind of starts off with this sapurisa. If you don't draw close to good people, if you don't make the effort to draw close to good people, then you don't create the opportunities to listen to the wise teachings, to saddhamma, the good dhamma. If you don't listen to wise teachings, the good teachings, then faith doesn't arise. If faith doesn't arise, then the mind will attend to unskillful things, so that you don't reflect wisely. If there's no faith, then your attention goes to seeking entertainment, distraction, gossiping, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, cricket. Maybe some of you feel cricket is really sacred, and it's on the other side of things, but you can spend an awful lot of time in this ritual combat of cricket or football, or there may be some very profound and spiritual aspects to the cricket, world of cricket. I realise I'm on delicate ground here, but the way the mind can get excited by competition is not usually particularly liberating. It's sort of a ritualized combat of A versus B, and who's going to win, and how's it going to turn out. That is not a particularly liberating zone of attention. So I would put that in the ayoniso manasikara rather than the yoniso manasikara. Unwise attention rather than the wise attention. Just count the number of hours that you can spend absorbed in sports or soap operas, or just wasteful ways that we pass our time. So that if then we don't attend wisely, we pass our time wastefully, then that reduces the quality of mindfulness, that we don't have mindfulness and wisdom. Without mindfulness and wisdom, then we tend to behave reactively, obsessively. The Pali term is there is no indriya samvara, there's no restraint of the senses. Essentially, it means if you like something, you chase after it. If you dislike something, you'll fight against it. Or if something is worrying, you'll run away from it. So that there's a reactive approach to life. There's no responsivity, no sense of consideration of how you behave, but rather the mind is impulsive, reactive. If the mind is impulsive and reactive, then you tend to follow the unskillful qualities of body, speech, and mind, the three kinds of unskillful action. You get caught into unskillful speech, unskillful thought, unskillful activity. With those three unskillful forms of action, that feeds the five hindrances: sense desire, ill will, dullness, agitation, and doubt. And then with the five hindrances increasing their strength, that is the prime fuel for avidya. That is like what avidya runs on, is the five hindrances: sense desire, ill will, dullness, restlessness, and doubt. So that all of that is fueled by who you right at the very root. The very root of that is who you choose to spend your time with, and how you choose to spend your time. So that if you flip it around and you do choose to spend your time with good people, sapurisa, then the opportunities to listen to the good Dhamma increase. Then faith increases. With the increase of faith, then you tend to attend wisely rather than unwisely. With the wise attention, then satipanya, mindfulness and wisdom, increases. The more mindfulness and wisdom there is, the less reactive you are, the less compulsive or impulsive. You're able to develop impulse control, as they say. If you're angry about something, you can know, this is an angry feeling. I don't have to yell. I don't have to get upset. This is an angry feeling, or this is a feeling of wanting. I'm attracted by something. I want to have it just because I want it. Do I really have to buy it? Do I have to get it? So that quality of restraint and say the ability to respond rather than react is strengthened. So you can be with what you like and not chase after it. You can be with what you dislike and not fight against it. So there's a much greater freedom in terms of like and dislike and so forth. When that quality of responsivity is developed, then the three unskillful kinds of action, unskillfulness of body, speech, and mind, is reduced. Instead, the qualities of skillful speech, skillful action, skillful thought are increased. As those are increased, then the hindrances are deprived of their fuel, that they are starved, so that the mind is less inclined towards sense desire or ill will, restlessness, dullness, and doubt. And with the five hindrances diminishing, that deprives ignorance of its fuel. So without fuel in the tank, it can't it can't move. So that is a kind of direct cause for the kind of, say, feeding of wisdom and awareness, vicca, and depriving avijja of its kind of its fuel. So another of the practices that I like to encourage is, in a sense, how to find more space in your day. And one of the question earlier about thinking, and about the other question about habits that we have. We find ourselves falling into particular habits. The question about compulsive dwelling on memories and so forth. A lot of these issues that pop up in our lives, either on a retreat or in everyday life, is because it seems that life is happening like a sort of like a continuous onslaught of stuff I have to deal with. There's always so many things going on in a day, and it's just like this incessant flow. There's so much to do, so little time. There's no space in the day. Is that a familiar experience? No? Yeah. So we might feel that, yeah, but I have got so many things to do. I've got so many responsibilities. I've got a huge family. I've got this whole college to run, or this business that I'm a manager of, or I have this all this stuff I have to deal with. And so often our sense of responsibility, trying to be a good person, to be working hard, to be taking care of our duties, that can seem like, because we are trying to be responsible and do a good job, that we're carrying all this stuff. And again, I'm speaking as someone who's on 15 different committees, as well as being the abbot of the monastery and the main teacher for the monastery. So there's a very simple practice that I like to encourage, which is a 5-second meditation. 5 seconds, not 5 minutes, 5 seconds. So during the course of the day, and you arrange it according to your own life how you can. Then during the course of the day, maybe 10 or 15 times during the day, just take the opportunity just to stop. So when you get up in the morning and you walk into the kitchen before you even turn the light on, and maybe you got up before everybody else, you're about to put the kettle on to make some tea, just stop. Be still. Don't do anything. Don't even meditate. Don't do anything. Just stop and be still for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's quite a long time, isn't it? Then go and switch the kettle on. And then, or when you go to the bus stop, or you go to your car before you turn the engine, just sit in the driver's seat before you touch anything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go to the bus stop. Before you start waiting for the bus, standing there, disguised as a completely ordinary human being, so no one on the outside knows, you can stand there and just have 5 seconds of doing nothing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now I'm waiting for the bus. So, and I'm kind of joking, but not joking. And so during the day, if we just stop, be still, it's amazing how much space there is in the day and how long 5 seconds can be. When we're just sort of racing on to the next thing, we're caught in that flow of bhava tanha, the desire to become kind of, what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next. And we're kind of leaning into the next moment all the time. But this simple practice is just, in a sense, you're noticing the space that's always here, but we miss it because we're so busy getting through this space onto the next interesting thing over there. But if we just stop, pay attention, the Dhamma is always here. It's akaliko, timeless. Sanditiko, apparent here and now. It's not over there. It's here. It's not just in the future. It's akaliko, it's timeless. Sanditiko, apparent here and now, ever present. So that it's a very simple, practical way of noticing space. The space is always here. Even in a board meeting, while the meeting's going on, while you're paying attention to what's there, you can just be sitting in your chair, listening carefully to what's going on, and just for a moment, just feel the presence of the body, and just let everything go for a moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that that is not, say, intrusive or complicated or difficult. You can always work it in one way or another, and that it helps to keep everything in a context. It helps to, show us that despite all the things we've got to do, the long list of our responsibilities, there's always space in the day, there's always time. And if you find that you can't find 5 seconds in the day, you are really in trouble. Really. My schedule doesn't even allow me to stop for that long. Then you really need to stop, because Mother Nature will just unplug you otherwise. You'll get benched by an aneurysm or a heart attack, or something will come along to, okay, sit. Another simple kind of related practice that I would do many years ago when Amaravati first started, the the buildings that comprise Amaravati originally they were just like scout huts. They were a summer camp, so they were uninsulated wooden sheds, really. They were then, after the Second World War, they were converted into a school. But when we moved there in 1984, no maintenance had been done on the site for 7 years. So not only were they uninsulated wooden huts, but they had broken windows and kind of doors that didn't fit, and kind of rotten window frames, and it was pretty rough. So we had to do a lot of physical work to fix the place up, to insulate the walls and the floors and the roofs, and make everything a bit more habitable. So there was always a lot of work going on. So when I was first there in '85, then every day, usually morning and afternoon, we'd have a lot of physical work going on. Also, I was a monastery secretary, so I had a lot of administration stuff to do, and then teaching various classes. So the days, basically, after the morning sitting finished at 6:30, then whoof, the whole sort of day would be one thing after another until sort of 10 in the evening. And so you could get this feeling of it's just jam-packed, this sort of back-to-back stuff all day long. So I began to develop this kind of 5-second meditations, to take a moment to be still here and there along through the day, and then found that there was a way of discovering there was many more hours in the day than I realized, just through stopping and being still. And one of the interesting things I would do was, so when we were doing all the building work and we were insulating these old huts, I would often go, like straight after the morning puja had finished, I would go to the work site and sit in the middle of these bales of insulation and the workbenches and the drills and the hammers and just sit in the middle of the work site. No one else is there. It's completely silent. The lights aren't turned on. Just feel the stillness and silence of the work scene. Just, okay, still, quiet, nobody here. This is here. This is this quality of presence and peacefulness and stillness is here. Then, when the work began, at 8:15, 8:30, and there's the people using the power saws and the drills and the hurling bales of insulation around, something would be remembering that stillness and silence, that this is the space that this is all happening within, and that would be recollecting that. And then at the end of the day, sometimes after the evening puja, about 9:30 or so, again I would sometimes go back to the work site, and the dust is still sort of settling. But again, just sitting there, moonlight coming through the windows, and then after all that bustle and movement and noise and people, then now it's this. And this stillness, this silence is here all night long. It's here in the background all the time. So the way you can translate that into your home, going to the places where all the action happens when there's nobody else there, just feeling the living room or the kitchen or the kind of gathering place, and just it's like this. There's this silence, this stillness, this space is always here, but we don't notice it because of the children and the parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles, and everybody coming and going and doing their thing. But that silence is always there, and stillness is always there. Or I would often, because I would go to many meetings, I'd sometimes go to the meeting room, the boardroom, and just sort of sit. Get there 10 minutes early, quarter of an hour early, and just feel the silence of the room before the meeting happened. And then as the meeting's going on, again, something in you remembers, there's the silence is actually still here behind all these voices, behind all this activity. And again, after it was all over, sometimes I'd go back, and particularly if there was a contentious meeting and there's a lot of sparks in the air, then going back and say, oh yeah, well, okay, there were these strong words or strong opinions, and people have great ideas, and other people didn't like them, and so. But behind that, there's this stillness, silence, space is always here. So that maybe you're worried about somebody walking into the boardroom and finding you sitting there by yourself, and think, oh dear, what's wrong with him? Is she having a breakdown? Or why is she standing in the middle of the doorway, not moving? So, you can choose your ways of finding these still moments, but and this might seem a bit sort of flaky or a bit weird, but I found these extremely helpful, practical ways just to not let the mind get caught in its habitual judgments and patterns of thinking. That you're changing the way that you relate to what you're doing and what's important and where you are, and to sort of reconfigure or sort of reframe the perspective on your life and what you're doing and why you're doing it. And to me, it's interesting how it wouldn't take much. It doesn't mean like you have to be there for hours in the silence. It's like just a few seconds or half a minute. That's all you need. It's like somehow your heart knows. Oh, of course. It's not like a whole sort of massive effort. It's just a sense of reminding what we already know. Being awakening some intuition that we already know to be the case, but we forget because our attention gets so easily caught up with what's bright and loud and mobile. So we lose track of the subtle and the indistinct, the space that this all happens in. So those are a few themes to reflect on for continuing the Viveka. Outside of the Kaya Viveka, the physical seclusion of a retreat time, into the expanded picture of the world.
Hanmayang dham kathaye sadhukarang dadamase sadhu 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 anumoda.
We can finish by chanting the highest blessings, the Mangala Sutta. That's page 38. Thus have I heard that the Blessed One was staying at Savatthi, residing at the Jeta's Grove in Anathapindika's park. Then in the dark of the night a radiant Deva illuminated all Jeta's Grove. She bowed down low before the Blessed One. Then standing to one side, she said, Devas are concerned for happiness and ever long for peace. The same is true for humankind. What then are the highest blessings? Avoiding those of foolish ways, associating with the wise, and honoring those worthy of honor. These are the highest blessings, living in places of suitable kinds, with the fruits of past good deeds, and guided by the rightful way. These are the highest blessings, accomplished in learning and craftsman's skills, with discipline highly trained, and speech that is true and pleasant to hear. These are the highest blessings, providing for mother and father's support, and cherishing family, and ways of work that harm no being. These are the highest blessings, generosity and a righteous life, offering help to relatives and kin, and acting in ways that leave no blame. These are the highest blessings, steadfast in restraint, shunning evil ways, avoiding intoxicants that dull the mind, and heedfulness in all things that arise. These are the highest blessings. Respectfulness and being of humble ways, contentment and gratitude, and hearing the Dhamma frequently taught. These are the highest blessings. Patience and willingness to accept one's faults, seeing venerated seekers of the truth, and sharing often the words of Dhamma. These are the highest blessings. Ardent, committed to the holy life, seeing for oneself the noble truths and the realization of Nibbana. These are the highest blessings. Although in contact with the world, unshaken the mind remains, beyond all sorrow, spotless, secure. These are the highest blessings. They who live by following this path know victory wherever they go, and every place for them is safe. These are the highest blessings.